how will AI impact events, right? That's first one. And then the second one on that is, what are specifics? Like, let's walk through specifics of like the way people are going to see it impacting either their job, the event that they hold, whatever it may be.
Oh my gosh. So I could do a whole like hour long episode just on this alone. So I'll try to give the high levels. So one thing that I commonly say is it's not AI that's going to replace you. It's somebody who's using AI is going to replace you. So this is
Yep.
like the cell phone moment with the iPhone, with calculators and math. It's not that necessarily these tools are going to completely replace somebody, but it's a tool that you can utilize to do more. So with that mindset in place, the way I always see, for example, I'm going to use ChatGPT as the example. It's the leading tool. OpenAI is doing great things. I think that if you're not using ChatGPT every day, you're probably missing out on time savings. So for me, right now, today, it's all about time savings, especially with written word. So for example, I'll use a real example so you can all hear us. Tomorrow,
Perfect.
I'm going to post something on LinkedIn talking about this award I won. Honestly, for me to like summarize down into one sentence what the award is about, why I'm like happy to do it, all these things like that. Instead, I took the articles that are talking about it. I gave it, some experience, some information about who I am. And, I basically took my latest job at working at Click and my job description I put in LinkedIn. And I said, can you write a LinkedIn post saying why I'm happy to be winning this award? And it just did it for me. You all are going to hear that right now. So you're going to be like, holy crap, that's really disingenuous, Will. And I can't believe you used AI to accept an award. But in reality is most people are not going to recognize that I did that way. But also the time it would have taken for me to really think okay, this is how I want to describe the award. This on. Otherwise, I would just say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I just won the Catalyst Award for this. Here's a link. It would just been boring and generic, right? So for us as event people, we need to start utilizing it to help us write things that we are commonly takes us a long time to write and put together. So for example, session descriptions, responding to customer inquiries, especially when they're angry at us, by the way. Everyone has this, an angry attendee, an angry vendor, an angry some sort of stakeholder. And a lot of times, like the example I use is how we can really help immediately pull back and save time is a lot of times we get these angry emails. We don't want to answer it in the heart of it because we're so pissed that we don't want to like yell right back, right? But in reality is feed it to the AI, which has no emotion. It can logically put together an answer and might be able to literally say what you're planning on saying and be like, wow, it said it so much more nicer than I would have ever used it. That's just one example, but anything written word, we need to start utilizing for it. The thing I think that is powerful now, and I can start confidently saying this now that the tools are really getting there. OpenAI announced yesterday that no longer is the data cutoff for like its understanding of the world from September 2021. It is now April 2023. And their goal is to shorten that gap as much as possible. So it understands what happened yesterday in the context of the world that we live in. So for example, you can start asking it things like who won the World Series a month ago and actually get the right answer versus the answer for September 2021. But the most important thing is the more context we give it, the more that we can also use it to help us automate jobs and work that we're doing. So, one thing that I really love doing is giving it a bunch of URLs to give it context and things. Hey, here's the Click product page. Now ChatGPT understands what Click is. And now I can say, hey, maybe here's some other things, keywords that I'm going after, whatever it may be. And now I can have it actually start writing marketing content, marketing lingo for me, which in reality used to take me a long time because there's the ideation phase, there's the, check back on copy, the editing phase, all that stuff takes time. But now we can literally write things like that very, very quickly. So where I see everyone able to use it right now is writing and saving time and using it as a tool to save us time from a productivity standpoint.
Well, first of all, one thought I had on that was the difficulty of responding to customer inquiries, I think is an interesting one. Like if you're running an event, you have an unhappy person, people typically shy away from responding to confrontation. It's difficult. People don't even like telling people negative things, even if it's not in a mean way, right? People don't want to say it. So I think that's a great, like a simple little nugget that you're just like, hey, put it in the ChatGPT, let them tell you what to say. It takes the emotion out of it, right?
Yeah.
What about from a data perspective, right? Because to me, data at events is a very important topic in the sense that obviously there's been this long-standing fight on big third-party events where the association to the sponsor exhibitor are sort of like, the association has the data of all the
Yep.
attendees, of everything going on. They don't want to give it up for some of it for good reason. And then the sponsor exhibitor's like, I need this data. I need it because
Yeah.
I need ROI, blah, blah, blah. So data's becoming more relevant in events, specifically now with softwares and the involvement of softwares and lead capture and running events on softwares. It's just going to become abundant and it's going to become important. What role does AI play in either curating, accelerating, or just helping organize data? How does that work?
Yeah, so like I'll start with like thinking we'll dive definitely deeper into the exhibitor and maybe how that could potentially be used properly. But I do think like, with tools like Click, you now have the ability to collect more data than ever, right? Like I can tell, oh, what's the dwell time of this area and things like that. The challenge with the data piece as well that I see very commonly amongst event professionals is that you have data and you're like, data is important, but then like, how do I draw trends and actionable insights from them? So I'll give more shout outs to OpenAI's recent announcement yesterday as they added this new tool called GPTs. They basically are going to build an app store for chatbots. So, and what's cool is you can build these GPTs using no code. You literally have a conversation with ChatGPT to say what you want and how it's built, and then it will build it and you can test it and then deploy it as its own separate GPT. And one of the most recent ones is a data analyzer. You literally can drag and drop spreadsheets in and all these things like that, and it'll look at the trends and things like that. And then this is where I think it starts to become powerful is that when we look at a spreadsheet, sometimes not everyone's analytically focused to be able to draw trends by looking at a spreadsheet. Now you have this tool to be able to have a conversation with it. Say, you could ask ChatGPT, what's some interesting things you see from this data? And that's a very open-ended question. It's going to look at it and be like, what's really interesting? From this year to this year, you saw a 25% increase at 9 a.m. for your registrants to show up and grab their badges. Or, hey, we saw that 40% of people actually ate at the food that came at the conference. Maybe we should consider reducing our budget. And like, you can start having conversations in a natural way, which is how we're all used to talking, because we don't talk in terms of spreadsheets. We don't say cell A equals 100, which is greater than cell B, which is 200. All these things like that. Like it allows us to have this really natural conversation about the data that we care about and to be able to draw those insights. And my hope is that this also saves time for people to do this faster. So whereas before you might have to say, hey, let me get the data, let me look at it a month later. My prediction is that, we're going to start collecting more data about events with, smart wearables and things like that we're seeing. But next is that we can take that data and start having real-time decision-making, and the time between receiving the data and analyzing the data and acting upon the data, the more that we can make that window as close as possible, the more that we can do actionable things. And it's very similar to like used to be with Fitbits and things like that. They'd say, oh yeah, this is how many steps you did at the end of the day. And you'd be like, oh man, wish I had known that halfway through the day. But if you notice that now it's smart enough on Apple Watches that like, it'll be like, you're not going to hit your goal based on your pace, based on the number of steps. You should consider up and get going and moving around. Now we can take these real-time analytics and give real-time feedback to create real-time changes in behavior.
The predicting missed goals piece that you just touched on at the end was, a bunch of that stuff was good. Sorry, I was trying to write some of this down. Being able to sort of like aggregate and populate that data to give you information, right? If you're a large enough event and you have enough information, it's probably very difficult to sort through. It takes weeks, months, maybe. So the speed in which you can do that to then allow you to make decisions or allow you to know how to follow up, allow you to know how to respond to maybe questions, right? It's just good stuff. The predicting missed goals is interesting. What you just said there about like, it's already kind of, so that's got to play into events and benchmarks. I'm sure large events have benchmarks, right? Obviously, everybody's at least trying to set them. So you would essentially, by using AI with data that you're tracking during the day of the event, you could know kind of where you stand.
Yeah. Like imagine that you go into the chatbot and you say, hey, here's my top 10 goals of what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to get more networking. I'm trying to make sure my exhibitors get more leads compared to last year. I'm trying to make sure that people are really happy with the content. You give it those goals. It goes, hey, yeah, I understand your goals. And then you say, here's a spreadsheet of information. did I hit my goals? Or am I
Yeah.
close to hitting my goals? I would hope it would be more real time. But let's say, for example, on day one, you drag and drop your stats into it and it says, yo, your goal was to get more attendee engagement, but based on the data that we're tracking, we see that only 50% of attendees have actually even met each other so far, or met at least one met less than 50% attendees have met less than two people. So hey, how can we get it so we have them engage with more people? And that's when you start to think, okay, well, I really think, and I apologize for everybody out there, I think very much like, how do you use tools like Click to do this now? Because it used to be before, I'd be like, yep, we'll do that and hope it's good. Like that's literally how we used to do it, is literally like by putting your finger up in the air and saying, yeah, it's 27 degrees out, right? But now with tools like this, I'm thinking about things like, if you can track your attendees in their location and you track how many connections that they make with each other, now you can say, what areas of the event do people meet the most amount of people? And this is extremely important for a huge line item, which we usually have at events, which is like the open bar. You'll always hear the argument over why we need an open bar. And why do we need, to keep the drinks flowing? Because everyone says it increases networking. Well, now you can say, like, did my 25% increase in the open bar lead to 25% more connections, or was it lopsided in some sort of way? So there's a lot of ways I think we can start using data to be able to understand like what actually matters for our events, and doing more of that, rather than like, what I feel, I have a very big bone to pick with food and beverage companies right now, is like, we spend so much money on food and beverage, but in reality, like, who actually eats the food at these convention centers? Like, do you actually enjoy it? Was it actually more convenient? Or should we just like start giving a 3-hour break for lunch, giving them a list of 5 restaurants within walking distance, and then, sending people on their way and letting them actually have time to enjoy their conversations at their meals, rather than, hey, how can I shove down this mediocre wrap sandwich that I was giving in within a convention center? And by the way, like, I'm just going to end up hating it completely. And the only reason I did it is because it was free. Right. Like, I think these sort of conversations is what we really need to be talking about in the events industry moving forward, rather than, what's the Pantone color of the year.